Hello, I'm Orkhan Amashov. We are always in the presence of history, and history is quite often too important to be ignored. The South Caucasus, poised upon a continental fault line, has long served as battleground for the ambitions of greater powers. That quality still endures. Today, the region stands at a moment of transition, where questions of strategic autonomy and the evolving nature of relations with Russia dominate the discourse. The guest of today's AnewZ Exclusive is Eka Tkeshelashvili, a figure of singular prominence in modern Georgian history. She served as foreign minister during those pivotal and harrowing days of 2008, when Georgia faced one of its gravest post-independence challenges. She later became deputy prime minister and continues to be an authoritative voice on regional policy and strategic thinking. Madam Tkeshelashvili, what a great privilege to interview you. Thank you very much indeed for this opportunity.
Thank you. Pleased to be with you.
Thank you very much indeed. So let's begin with the latest summit of Economic Cooperation Organization. This interview is taking place effectively in the wake of that very, very crucial summit hosted by Azerbaijan in Khankendi. It took place at a very interesting juncture in the aftermath of the 12-day war between Israel and Iran, at a time of escalating tensions between Azerbaijan and Russia, which are classified as being unprecedented. Although Georgia is not a member of Economic Cooperation Organization, it would be very interesting to hear your reflections about the juncture, its nature, criticality, and do you think Georgia is actually stand to benefit from such cooperation, wherein Azerbaijan, Georgia's crucial neighbor, is playing an important role?
Absolutely. I think that there are several factors to consider when we speak about the meeting and the importance of the meeting per se, and then decisions that have been taken.
Yeah.
One and the very pivotal factor is that the meeting did take place against the backdrop of all the factors that you mentioned when it comes to international context as of now. It really highlighted, I would say, as a testament of the fact of the rising power of diplomacy and then the regional power is a meat power of Azerbaijan right now in the region. Many have thoughts whether or not the meeting could have taken place, what would have been the level of representation, decisions that were taken. But then the very fact that it was very productive, very representative, an important meeting of the kind that we all have witnessed is, again, a testament of the fact that of the role that Azerbaijan plays now beyond the region, but definitely in the region as well in this case. Maneuverability in very tense geopolitical times, as we all are in the region right now, is not anymore a goal or a strategic outcome, but rather shaping the future of the region and then playing a leading role in these processes that goes well beyond the regional parameters themselves. So in that regard, this meeting was just an excellent highlight of the potential of the region and of the role of Azerbaijan as a lead actor in the region in this case. For Georgia itself, the potential is definitely there. I might have wished for Georgia to have more clear and strategically shaped strategy right now in terms of its role in the region and beyond region as well, to be not just a contributing partner in this discourse, but being part of those that could shape the outcomes that will define the future of the region. But it's more of a passive participation at best in some of the processes that we see, or absence in some, as we've seen in the last meeting as well. Having said that, the potential is still there, and I would only wish that in the future Georgia would be on par when it comes to not just participation, but then strengthening and consolidation of the potential of our region for the future.
Well, thank you very much indeed for explaining all the key elements of this backdrop and also nitty-gritty factors ingrained at the heart of that potentiality to which you referred earlier. So before, talking about Azerbaijan's bilateral relations with Georgia, I would like to discuss this relations of this region as a whole, South Caucasus, with Russia. And as we know, Russia's relations with each of the South Caucasus states have become increasingly problematic and complicated. Armenia has got its own problems. There is an ongoing internal battle between the government and church, and there is a Russian factor there that many analysts refer to. Georgia, of course, continues to grapple with the occupation of 20% of its sovereign territory, and most recently, Azerbaijan and Russian ties have entered a new phase of unprecedented tensions following the latest violent raid in Yekaterinburg. But we know the roots of that problem effectively go back to the 25th of December, to that downing of Azerbaijani airplane. How would you evaluate the current historic juncture wherein Russia has got problematic relations with all members, constituent members of the South Caucasus? What is your feeling about what's happening now?
The core of the problem, if it can be defined as a problem, is the fact that for Russia, it's still very hard to accept that the countries that are in Caucasus or elsewhere, which used to be part of the Soviet Union and the Tsarist Empire, perhaps prior to that, are actually sovereign nations, have had an ancient history of being sovereign and independent states, and have reclaimed that right in the recent history, and are trying to build the best for their own countries, for their own people, and exercise that right of sovereignty and independence. And that's at the core of it. Russia has best relations with the countries in the neighborhood, which are very weak, which are fragmented themselves from internal political point of view, and are dependent on Russia. As long as any country in the neighborhood of Russia, as it is called still up to now, starts to be strong, independent, economically developed, and then exercise not just its own fundamental right of sovereignty and independence, but become a leader of its own sort when it comes to either reforms, transformations, economic development, regional and geopolitical discourse regarding the region itself. Russia sees a problem and challenge in it, because for Russia, still the vision for the future is an imperial future, as it has been, unfortunately, for the past centuries as well. Now, having said that, is it a predicament for the countries which are in the region not to be ambitious and not to be proud enough to build the future that is not in line with the future vision of the future that Russia has? Absolutely no. And in that regard, the fact that there is this escalation, as you have mentioned, or confrontation that is growing, or tension, is just a testament of the fact that Azerbaijan is very successful right now in terms of development, reclaiming its own sovereign rights, and building up the country that has becoming an envy to many in the region when it comes to consolidation, development, and the exercise effectively of its own potential, geopolitically that be, or economically for that matter. It is an inevitable, unfortunately, tension with a country like Russia until Russia pursues its own policy of having subjugated neighbors rather than neighbors that are prosperous and the good neighbors and with whom one can have a very good relationship when it comes to prosperity and common shared strategies even for the future. Now, unfortunately, it's just not even a theoretical vision one can have when we speak about Russia. So the only counter strategy that any country can have in this regard is strengthening internally, development of its own potential, and then building the very strong network of alliances and partnerships. And in this regard, every country now in the region tries to do so, except of my own, I would say, when it comes to effective partnerships and alliances that it could have been building in this regard. I'm very pleased to see that it's not only bilateral progress of negotiations on the peace deal between Azerbaijan and Armenia that we have witnessed with very strong dedication of political leadership to that end, but broadening that up with the potential of having trilateral relations with Turkey, and then beyond as well when it comes to the major players in the region. So that in that regard, opening up rather than closing up of the region could be our future, a future where Russia has no exclusive rights anymore and will have no capacity, not just the ambition, to be an actor that could jeopardize otherwise progressive development of our countries in the region.
Talking about internal consolidation, connectivity, and about the fact that Russia shouldn't have exclusive rights in order to sort of jeopardize this process happening internally in the South Caucasus. President Ilham Aliyev recently stated that Azerbaijan and Georgia, over the past 3 decades, have already built the essential connectivity infrastructure in this region, for this region, and that the middle corridor, that wide east-west corridor connecting China with Europe, already exists in our region. From your perspective, how have bilateral ties between Baku and Tbilisi evolved since your time in office? And how critical is it that Azerbaijan and Georgia should act in line in order to make sure that that eventuality to which we've made reference earlier, indeed part and parcel of the future?
Very strong strategic partnership, which is, in my definition, beyond strategic partnership that we have between our nations. It's brotherly nations indeed, and then it's intergenerational and lasts over the span of the history in this case, is pivotal for not just the progressive development of our countries, but then in some cases it has been existential. I very much recall a very critical time in my own country when Russia cut off just abruptly in a very cold month of January at the time all supplies of gas, and then trade relations, and with the hope and I guess even an anticipation that we would crumble as an independent state at the time and would beg Russia for forgiveness from our side, and then would get back to the fold as Russia would see that. We maintained our sovereignty and our independence not just only because of the internal dedication of our own people and political leadership, but with the help and assistance that we've received with our strategic partners, and primarily in that case by Azerbaijan and then President of Azerbaijan, when our existential survival at the time depended in so many ways from the help that we've received at the time from Azerbaijan. This is just an example that will never fade away and always will be a remembrance and in fact a reference point in that regard, how important is not just the neighborly relations, but very strong strategic relationship when it comes to the countries like Georgia and Azerbaijan. It's not just neighborly relations once again. I do agree with the president that the infrastructure has been built, the corridor is already there. It has taken not just a lot of efforts and dedication from the generations that I've represented myself, but then the generations before as well, when that vision of establishing that corridor have been not only passed through the next generations, but then the foundations have been laid at that time. Now, having said that, what else can be achieved? The potential is out there for more, obviously, when it comes to strategic alignment and then actions that could be achieved together. And I wish that we will be able, from our side, when it comes to the Georgian side, to transcend the realities of today and be more creative with our partners, our friends, our brotherly nations in the region to build future more creatively in a 21st century when we can think about more than what we already have, especially in the high tech, in a green energy field, and then in the alignment of our vision for the region geopolitically as well.
Indeed. And the year 2008 was probably one of the most consequential in Georgia's post-independence history. That was a moment of ultimate existential crisis for the nation, and you were foreign minister back then. Many Azerbaijani analysts say that that was also a moment of sobering for Azerbaijan, because Azerbaijani analysts and foreign policymakers realized that too much reliance on Western support would not lead to anything positive if you do not yourself have sufficient military capabilities. And many would say that fact that Azerbaijan recovered its territorial integrity and sovereignty is one of the key developments that happened in this region, and that could be at the heart of what we call House of Caucasus. On the basis of what Azerbaijan did, I know that Georgia and Azerbaijan, two different cases, of course. Is there any lesson, do you think, Georgia could learn the way Azerbaijan gradually, in a very incremental way, sorted out one of its the most existential issue related to the Karabakh conflict?
I think some of it, to what you've alluded, was clear back then in 2008 to us as well when it comes to the need of internal strength and not only military capabilities, but economic strength, and then the social cohesion when it comes to the public and population in that case. We've never planned at the time to go to war with Russia. We were planning very steady and systemic development at the time of our country. Georgia was at that time one of the lead countries in terms of the ratio of of the GDP that was spent on the rearmament, meaning modernization of our army when it comes to the human capacity that be or the military capabilities as well. We've been engaged with our army representatives as well on a large scale with foreign military operations as well, as a way of training and alignment with the modern ways of combat and capability build-up as well. It was very unfortunate that we didn't have enough time to continue that trajectory at the time when Russia aggressed my country and then we have been attacked. I still have a very strong sense of pride for our military, who even at that time, with the limited capabilities that we've had, hold on the line of defense and gave time for diplomacy to play in the way that at least the sovereignty and independence of the country against the aggressor like Russia with full military strength that was coming against our country could have been maintained. So we owe our current independence and sovereignty to our military, who have fought at the time and then gave us time for survival when it comes to the independence and sovereignty. But the lesson again drawn from that time was that nobody is ever ready, as it seems even now, observing the large-scale aggression against Ukraine, to have a clear strategy what to do with a country like Russia, which is a clear aggressor, has a revisionist policy for the international order, and to overcome a sense of weakness at some point in the countries where the strength is present to counter the policies of Russia like that. And in that regard, we have seen that there has been an evolution of realization of what Russia represents right now in the Western countries, if we could generalize that in that regard. But there is still not the full comprehension that Russia's action never stop. When Russia achieves a partial success at a given country, Russia's ambition only grows if there is no accountability for the crimes that committed previously. So in that regard, I strongly believe that accountability for the actions that Russia has committed in Georgia and then in Ukraine now that are being committed, if the accountability will not be enforced, Russia's ambition and aggressive stance will be growing. Whenever Russia will have, after some time of rest, more capabilities that Russia could develop further. And the only thing we can do in the meantime is exactly what Azerbaijan has been doing continuously in a systemic way. Internal development, strengthening it of internal capabilities, social cohesion, development of its role in shaping up the regional policies, and diversification of internal partnerships in this case. And to have alliances and strategic partnerships that could be there when you need the most, so to say. And in that regard, partnership with Turkey, obviously, for Azerbaijan stands out, but it's not the only vector of partnership that Azerbaijan has developed, with better in Azerbaijan, but it's very multivectoral. So in this case, or in the case of Georgia as well, the worst case scenario that we can have if Russia chooses to do more is to be alone when you are confronted by Russia, when you are a small country as Georgia. The best case scenario for you in this case always will be to hold the line for some time until multilateral diplomacy could kick in. And that's not the very promising case scenario, obviously, for the country.
Although Azerbaijan is not a member of NATO, Azerbaijan has got a treaty alliance with Turkey, and therefore we say that Azerbaijan has got this indirect NATO protection by virtue of having this treaty-based alliance with Turkey. We discussed a number of issues, Madam Tkeshelashvili, a number of issues. We talked about Georgia-Azerbaijan relations, about the Middle Corridor, regional connectivity, about the potentiality that may be part and parcel of the future when Azerbaijan and Armenia sign a peace deal. And that peace deal, if that happens, there will also be Turkish-Armenian normalization, which will effectively lead to the stronger, more prominent Turkish presence in the South Caucasus. Is Georgia comfortable with an idea of more assertive Turkey in the South Caucasus?
We've been very proactively pursuing development of our partnership with Turkey for a long time. We're very fortunate that at least it's only one neighbor that we have as a former empire that still pursues the imperialistic policies in its vision and strategic understanding of the world. And Turkey is not. It's a modern country, which is part of NATO, which is a very strong and reliable partner for the countries in the region. And it's not the historical past of confrontations, but the potential of the future that can be well pursued with Turkey. For any partnership to develop strategically, however, and then to the benefit of people of any given country, there needs to be internal strategy for the development clearly developed, because ultimately any given country needs to be in the lead position of understanding what's best for your own country in this case. So if there is any not full realization of potential of partnership, or tilting of the sort of the ratio of who benefits more from any given partnership, it's a two-way street. Unless you do your own job well, you cannot have an expectation that somebody else will be doing it for you. So in this case, when it comes to exploring the potential for the region, we all owe it to our own people to do the best and then to maintain that potential for the time being, if you don't realize that to the fullest, but then to be persistent and systemic in terms of realizing that potential for the future. And just one small reference point again, when it comes to security threats and Russia, I think what distinguishes the most now, as we see the war unfolding against Ukraine from the Russian side, it's not just only military capabilities per se that define the outcome, but it's the willingness to defend your sovereignty and independence. In very simple words, to have a clarity in the public that when it comes to the core of your independence and sovereignty, you need to be ready to die for the sovereignty and independence of your country if it comes to it, and then hold the line of defense if it comes to it. My own people and my own military showed that readiness back in 2008, but it takes clarity of development of the military capabilities and then political vision in any given country for the public to be ready to do that. And when it comes to NATO, it's a very strong alliance and penetrable as we all know it for now. But when it comes to which countries are actually ready to go to war, if it comes to it, not all members might be ready to do so. And Turkey is one of those countries we have seen already.
Back in
this last history, and then in that regard, having that kind of the treaty with a country like Turkey obviously means a lot.
And back in 2008, when you were one of the key figures of a Georgian government, Georgia was unanimously described by everybody as the most pro-European nation in the region. But now things have changed and changed considerably. Georgia's path towards European integration has been long and complex. How would you assess, just very basic and general question, how would you assess the current situation when it comes to Georgia's relation with Western institutions, including the European Union?
We have two layers, and it's very unfortunate when there's no alignment between the public sentiment and between the government, because you are strongest as a country when you are aligned with the political leadership and then with the public per se. Georgian country as a country and then people of Georgia remain to be very pro-European. And it's not just even pro-Europeanness. I guess it's just historical belonging as we feel it, that we're part of Europe. It's just Europe that forgot that Europe was not only West Europe historically, but the center of Europe and civilization, of European culture and civilization, was to where we are now in our part of the world, rather than what Western Europe is now. So that short memory is being lifted step by step right now in Western Europe, but it's more of a problem for Western Europe rather than how we see what history in this region was, and then where civilizationally we have belonged and then do belong. So that's a choice that is still there. When it comes to the government of Georgia, it suspended official talks for the accession, and then is not realizing the potential of a candidate state as we are for the membership of the European Union. I believe that for the country like Georgia, it's a great loss. It's a pause. It's not yet Georgia being cut off from that discourse. Until the situation changes to the better in my own country, I don't see a potential for that to be pursued more vigorously in the future. But so far, there is no determination from the side of the European Union that Georgia is not anymore a candidate state. So it's a pause that is very unfortunate. It costs a lot for the economic development of our country, I believe, but not only economic, but generally for the development of the country. But it's an unfortunate reality that so far, I'm afraid, we haven't been able to change that much for the better.
Madam Tkeshelashvili, thank you very much indeed for your time. As I said at the beginning of the interview, we are always in the presence of history, and history is too important to be ignored. And this juncture, undoubtedly, at which this interview is taking place, is also very, very important in mid-2025. Thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, in a region where history rarely sleeps and geography remains destiny, reflections such as these help illuminate the path forward. My thanks to Madam Eka Tkeshelashvili for her insights and time. And thank you to you for watching. You've been watching AnewZ Exclusive, and see you very soon indeed.